It's draft season. It's draft day, matter of fact. And you want to have the best tips to go ahead and win your league and crush the competition. Well, guess what? The 5 draft day hacks that you need. Smash like and subscribe button. Let's start talking about how to cook up the best fantasy football draft you possibly can. Ever. You'll win, no matter what. We are over on flockfantasy.com, courtesy of Mason Dodd, the GOAT, for letting us use this free tool. Go check it out yourself. Listen, the first tip is very, very simple. Know your league's scoring format. It's very important. You know, depending on the league you're in, you might be having a league where passing touchdowns are either 4 points or 6 points. In a 6-point passing touchdown format, that's honestly not the standard. It's not the typical. I think it should be because those are the leagues I play, and I make sure it's 6-point passing touchdown. But what that does, it gives you an advantage in terms of quarterback rankings, right? If you're in a 4-point passing touchdown league, you're going to want to bump up guys that have the rushing upside because the rushing value that they can provide is much larger. Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, all those guys deserve to be where they currently are. Now, if you're in a league where 6-point passing touchdowns, right, then the rushing upside, it's still important, but it's not as important because if Dak Prescott comes out and he has the same passing touchdown rate that we've seen in the past throughout his career, take a look. 2.1 touchdowns per game, 2.3. 2 touchdowns per game on average in a couple of these years. That's a 12-point floor, not including any of the other stats and the yards that he's accumulating, right? In those years, he averaged 300 passing yards per game. So the floor can be pretty safe with some of these no rushing upside, passing touchdown dependent quarterbacks, depending on your scoring rules. So half PPR, non-PPR, and full PPR, right? That's another type of scoring rule. If you are in a full PPR league, that usually bumps the wide receivers up draft boards. If you're in a half PPR league, then running backs and wide receivers, I usually say, are about similar value, but running backs have more value in that format than wide receivers do in full PPR, where they get bumped up the board even more. Now, the next tip, and this kind of balances with the first one, is going to be knowing your roster configuration, your roster format. Very, very often people say, oh, who should I take? And I'm like, listen, I got to know your league rules, your league scoring, and I got to know what your roster configuration is. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, how many quarterbacks? That's the first thing. Is it a super flex? Usually the answer is no, unless you're in a dynasty league. So usually you only have one quarterback. How many running backs and wide receivers do you have to start every single week? Not flexes, how many RBs and wide receivers? Usually the answer is 2 and 2. Tight ends, usually the answer is 1. And then we get to the flex spot, which is very interesting. A lot of the time, if the flex spot is only one flex, then running backs can be in play, and usually wide receiver values, you start fading wide receivers a little bit in those formats. Now, if it's PPR, you still are going to want a good wide receiver to be in that flex over a running back, most likely. But if it's 2 flex or more, where you can start up to 4 wide receivers, you really got to bump up wide receivers in your rankings and on your draft board. So if you're in a format where you are going to have at least 4 wide receivers able to be starting, bump up wide receivers and make sure you get 4 wide receivers that can play in your lineup every single week. Now, we're going to have to talk about the running back strategy because if you're going 4 wide receivers that can start, what do you do at running back? So we're going to cover that here soon. So now we're going to look at some ADP targets. Those are the first 2 main draft day tip hacks, right? Make sure you are aware of those things. Now we talk about how to exploit the rankings. First tip is running back strategy. We just mentioned, listen, if you have a double flex, how do you get 4 wide receivers and still play catch up at running back? I actually think that there's very good wide receiver values available late in drafts this year. You can see the expert rankings. Now, the experts on the site obviously are going to have probably better rankings than ESPN ADP. But if we're looking at guys like Michael Pittman, Keon Coleman, they all have an ADP of around 100. You're talking about round 10. You can get starting wide receiver ones on some pretty decent offenses, right? Now, the upside might not be as high with those guys. The floor probably is a little bit lower with these guys. But still, the volume projects to be there. Whereas with running back, this is a very important tip for your drafts. Make sure you're listening. You're going to want to have 3 running backs by the time you get to an ADP of 100. My favorite strategy is getting 2 running backs in the first 4 rounds, 2 RBs. So I would go somebody like Chase Brown and pair him up with Amari Hampton, and then, round 2, round 3. You come out with Chase Brown and Amari Hampton, you're thinking to yourself, I don't need another RB. You do. Why? Because of the ADP cliff that happens after Tony Pollard. After Tony Pollard, Tony Pollard's ADP right now, I mean, these guys are even. Tony Pollard's ADP is 70. You have Pacheco at 72. You have Tyrone Tracy at 80. So after an ADP of 80, in the middle of the 7th round, in the middle of the 8th round, if you don't have a third running back, you don't really want to. You're not looking to start Tony Pollard. You're not looking to start Tyrone Tracy. But if you don't have that third running back as insurance, what if Amari Hampton goes down? What if Chase Brown goes down? What if it's a bye week? You're going to want to have 3 startable running backs. Now, the third one can be mid, but you still want them to have projectable volume. So I don't want to go 2 good RBs like we talked about, and then go Austin Eckler. Go Isaac Guerrero, Braylon Allen. Those guys have upside for sure, but I want somebody with projectable volume as my number 3. So make sure you get 3 RBs by the time that ADP cliff happens. Now we're going to talk about tight end strategy. In terms of tight end strategy this year, it's pretty simple. Honestly, if you don't get one of the big boys, there's 4 players. Bowers, McBride, Kittle, Laporta. They're all fairly priced. They're all fairly ranked. Bowers is actually sliding down draft boards, if you can believe it. People are scared about his usage in the preseason. Boys, if Bowers is sliding to you at the end of the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd, please take him. Now, tight end, you only have 1 tight end spot. If you're in a double flex, you honestly bump tight ends down a little bit. But the advantage you can give you only start 1. So if you're starting Brock Bowers, someone else is starting Colston Loveland, Jake Ferguson, you have a distinct positional advantage right there. Now, obviously, if they took a higher tier wide receiver or running back, that's where you're going to have to play catch up. These 4 tight ends all are safe picks in my eyes. Hawkinson, not a huge fan of his price. Tyler Warren is soaring up draft boards. I actually think he's pretty fairly priced now too. You were getting an insane discount when he was going ADP of 125. Now his ADP is 125, but he's going in round 6, round 7. So, I mean, he's getting pumped up draft boards for sure. My favorite strategy is pairing up a old veteran with a new guy. Colston Loveland is kind of the guy that hasn't gotten any recognition, unlike Tyler Warren. He's where Warren was prior to Warren's ascension into the ADP ranks. So I like going Mark Andrews, Colston Loveland. Go Tucker Kraft, Colston Loveland. Maybe even go Kyle Pitts and Tucker Kraft, right? So you want to mix and match your 2 favorite guys. Honestly, back-to-back rounds might be a good strategy for this as well. That's what I would do myself a lot in best ball drafts, is I would pair up Mark Andrews with Colston Loveland, Mark Andrews with Tyler Warren, Tucker Kraft with one of those guys, right? On a veteran presence that's going to score points early in the season, and then a higher upside rookie or somebody with higher upside like Pitts at a discount that you think can be scoring points in the back half or even immediately in some of these rookies' cases. Now, the last tip, the last hack is going to be quarterback strategy. With quarterbacks, it's kind of similar to tight ends. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Daniels, Jalen Hurts. Jalen Daniels, I think, is a bit overpriced, but the case definitely can be made that if he has the same rushing volume and rushing upside as he did last year, where he had 800 plus rushing yards, I think Jalen Daniels is fairly priced. I'm just a bit scared of injury. He had the banged up rib last year. I'm a bit scared of regression. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts are my favorite picks. Jalen Hurts is my favorite value by far. I believe Jalen Hurts should be right up there after Lamar Jackson. So if you can get Hurts at a discount, it's a good pick. Burrow, Mahomes, I'm not a huge fan of their ADPs. And what I've seen, if you're in a league with people that know what they're doing, I've seen Mahomes falling down draft boards to a similar range as I've seen Bo Nix fall down draft boards too, right? A lot of people, if you're in a double flex league, they're going to kind of ignore the quarterback position if they don't get one of the elite names, which is honestly smart. If you don't get the elite quarterback, it might be smart to just kind of punt QB to somebody you're comfortable with. Like, how much of a gap it really is there between Baker Mayfield, who's the next best QB after Pat Mahomes? How much of a gap is there between Mayfield and Dak Prescott? Now, sure, looking at what Baker Mayfield did in a 1-year sample size, he was the QB4 with 21 points per game. Now, let's go ahead and look at Dak, who goes on average 2 or 3 rounds later. Honestly, I've seen Dak Prescott go on 4 rounds later. Prescott has a larger span of games where he was averaging 20-plus points per game. The last, 2 of the 3 last years, he was hurt for sure. He only, played 8 games and 12 games, and he averaged 15, 16 points per game. What I'm saying is that it's not really like you're getting a huge advantage. Like Josh Allen, Lamar, Hurts, you know what these guys are going to give you. Like if we look at Lamar Jackson and what he did last year, where Lamar averaged 25 points per game, he had 28 in his 2nd year in the league. Like the upside is unbelievable. With Baker, with some of the guys with less rushing upside, you're kind of just looking for consistency and somebody that can put some points in your lineup week in, week out. So that's kind of my quarterback strategy, and that's really the best draft hacks that you boys need to win your league. Smash the like, subscribe button. Let me know what you got down below. Peace out.